whether he knows what, like, Jack Posovic's long history of associations and alliances and, with actual neo-Nazis abroad and members of the far right, and his promotion of Pizzagate, or any of Jack Posovic's history, or he is choosing not to say it because he thinks his audience wants to see him chat with Jack Posobiec. And I think he's had Posobiec on at least 3 times. In the end, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
It really, really doesn't matter what his motivations are, why he's doing it. I
Or if
think
he's a
the
useful idiot.
right, the long-term question of whether he actually knows this and is just sort of kitty cornering it, or he's just doesn't want to know, so he's not going to do the work. The end result is still the same.
This just came out today in the Daily Beast. I first want to thank Hey It's Vadim. Check out his YouTube channel, youtube.com/Hey It's Vadim, formerly The Creationist Cat, for setting up this bombshell interview that you're about to see before you between the Daily Beast author extraordinaire, in this case. He's going to be coming up on the show to tell us the inside scoop on Tim Pool. Pretty wild. So, by mid-afternoon, January 4th, it had become increasingly clear that a slew of far-right actors were gearing up for violence at the Capitol. Tim Pool derided and dismissed the accurate reporting out of hand. Of all the ideological enemies Pool, 35, rails against on YouTube for his audience of millions per day, few stack up to the mainstream press. In his mind, then, coverage of then-President Donald Trump's investigation and the mounting threats was yet another example of the media's depravity, he said. What do you think they're going to do? Asked Pool. It's so stupid. 2 days later, a mob stormed the Capitol, whipped into a frenzy by nonsensical claims about a stolen election determined to put a stop to the constitutional transfer of power. To date, nearly 600 of the alleged rioters, a mishmash of Trump backers, QAnon adherents, and members of militias and extremist groups, have been arrested. Throughout autumn 2020, the widely successful YouTube pundit has spent countless hours hyping up the blinkering legal strategies of the half-baked fantasies about voter fraud, animating the online right. At the same time, in each video, Pool tried to separate himself from the hardcore conspiracy theorists. After all, he was just commenting on the news. What Pool kept secret from his younger, overwhelmingly male, decidedly right-leaning audience during that time is that he seemed to have a pretty good idea what might happen on January 6th. Dude, I've got messages from people saying that they've already got plans to rush to DC as soon as November 3rd goes chaotic, Pool said in early September during a recorded conversation reviewed by the Daily Beast. Oh no. A few minutes later, Pool added, the right-wing militias, the Oath Keepers, the 3%ers, and just the Proud Boys and Trump supporters, they are going to rush full speed at DC. They are going to take the White House and do whatever they can, and paramilitary. Pool made these comments to then colleagues at media company he started. The following month, Pool used his YouTube platform to say the Oath Keepers had been unjustly smeared by the Southern Poverty Law Center. He habitually comes to the defense of the Proud Boys as well. Now, Tim Pool is a dangerous figure. I've been saying this for a while. He's got the largest audience on the YouTubes in terms of combining all his respective channels. But holy shit, the guy who has been talking about the Civil War, the incoming Civil War, was also promoting the Civil War that he wanted. He wanted to manifest reality for everyone to see. This glaring omission is not out of character for Tim Pool, far from it. Former digital media journalist who originally built up his name with on-the-ground reporting and live streaming, including stints at Vice and Fusion, Pool now postures as a rational centrist or disaffected liberal. Who else is doing this? Who grew up to loathe the excesses of the left, excesses. If you buy Pool's branding, he stands in contrast to the bulk of his journalistic peers. Evil liars, he says, who supposedly capitulated on the agendas of Black Lives Matter, Antifa, Democrats, big tech, feminists, and the like. This self-generated mythology, an anti-authoritarian truth teller whose successes stem from confronting the machine, as Pool puts it, bears little semblance to reality. Contrary to the overall manner in which Pool portrays himself, he was not an intrepid field reporter or streamer who barreled into the conflict zones filled with unshakable desire to ferret out the real story. Pool was at times reluctant to leave the safety of his hotel room, according to several of the newly 30 former co-workers and other acquaintances from the past decade who spoke with the Daily Beast. The Daily Beast interviewed 30 people who have used to work with Tim Pool to get this bombshell report. During shoots, Pool's head was frequently buried in his phone, diligently tracking social media, only to blame his co-workers or equipment when he couldn't live up to his clippings. Pool's main focus when reporting those on the ground with him said was drawing attention to himself. A coward and a phony, a joke, staggeringly arrogant, totally full of shit, not smart, a bumbling doofus, are representative samples of those who worked with with Poole at digital media companies describing him. Most did so on the condition of anonymity, but in some instances citing possible reprisals by Poole and harassment from his fans. Since then, Poole discovered a style of commentary and audience where his lack of knowledge or journalistic skills might not prove an impediment to success. In some ways, incuriosity and incapacity serve as valuable attributes in this medium, not solely because of the political valence, but because of, in part, how YouTube itself functions, rewarding the kind of high-volume, sensationalized, and choppy slurn Poole specializes in. And it's what we do too over here, you know? And it has made Poole both exceedingly rich and one of the most watched independent YouTube political pundits in the country, with over 3.3 million subscribers, 1.5 billion views, and by all estimates, hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue per month. He earned $600,000 in August 2020, and most of it came from YouTube, Poole claimed in recorded conversations. He makes over $600,000 a month just in ad revenue. That is astounding. Unlike his peers in conservative media, Poole wasn't boosted by the usual suspects. Neither the Koch brothers, the Mercer plan, nor another deep-pocketed billionaire forked over seed money, and he didn't game Facebook algorithms. Fox News has more or less ignored him, as has the institutional Republican Party and its network of well-funded think tanks. True. Now right-wing and far-right figures, many of whom might not be welcomed on a platform to the left of Tucker Carlson tonight, not only have taken notice, they come to him. In 2020 and continuing through 2021, a rotating cast of Stop the Steal activists, Capitol rioters, QAnon and Pizzagate promoters, 9/11 truth, grifters, anti-vaxxers, anti-Semites, misogynists, cranks, neo-fascists, turned down Poole's Maryland podcast studio to appear on Timcast IRL, his 2-hour-plus long YouTube livestream, where Poole allows them to peddle their wares before 6-digit audiences and receive very little pushback. This would come as no surprise. Whenever a right-wing politician, personality, or group enters the news cycle, Poole finds a way to sand down their actual stated beliefs or will claim ignorance. Business is booming for Poole, as a dozen employees on his payroll since April, a prominence made him in no small part by YouTube promoting his work to the front page. I know for a fact, he said in December 2020 live stream, the YouTube algorithm drives the majority of my content. At other times, he'll complain that YouTube is suppressing his content or will ban them outright. YouTube picks and chooses which content gets views and which creators become famous, he told a Twitter follower. For some time now, misinformation has proliferated and its merchants have thrived on YouTube, particularly on the right. 3 years ago, Poole's channel was included in studies about how YouTube serves as radicalization's vector, algorithmically leading viewers to seek far-out creators of content. But his evolution indicates that YouTube doesn't just impact audiences, the money and fame radicalizes the creators too. The proof lies in its output. Despite the continued insistence on being viewed as center-left and a truth teller, Daily Beast review of hundreds of hours of Poole's commentary revealed a consistent, if not broad, scatology. Sorry. No matter which ginned-up atrocity is rolling the online right on any given day, Poole routinely will deem it a crucial sign pointing towards a civilization-ending crisis or imminent civil war. Sometimes he'll declare a civil war is already underway. Who is to blame? A vaguely defined yet omnipresent and menacing left-wing other. As a matter of fact, usually George Soros. As a matter of fact, Poole depicts people and groups on the left as potentially bomb-tossing radicals, authoritarian lunatics, cultural shifts, gestures towards social and racial justice, will lead to chaos and gulags stocked with the victims of morality policing. They will never stop coming. They will take your job away. They'll come for your parents. You will do something wrong and they'll fire your mom. They'll come for your house with your firework and guns. Recently, Poole hired a far-right extremist to run his website, and privately he'll go beyond howling about civil war, and on a few occasions he'll put it more explicitly, a race war is soon to come. When Poole said so, Tarek Johnson, a black employee of his defunct media company in 2019, he also told him to choose a side. He told a black employee to choose a side. Wow. Because his ex-boss couldn't ascertain as to which side you're going to be on, is how Johnson recalled Poole phrasing it. Two individuals familiar with the event backed up Johnson's account. When reached for comment, Poole fervently denied that Johnson was talking about a race war and called any suggestion insane. Poole's journey from beanie-clad Occupy Wall Street live streamer to reactionary social media platformer, it's a trajectory I've seen before, says the Southern Poverty Law Center, almost as if it's with young and youngish men who are so laser-focused on making their own careers that they arrive at the racism and misogyny almost by accident. Timothy Daniel Poole was born in 1986. I was just going to go through his life history. I want to see if there's any other bombshells, because I got to bring on the guy who wrote this. This is about his Occupy Wall Street, one-man creator. Wow, this is so thorough. Goes into his work in Turkey. One female ex-vice staffer recalled in 2013 conversation with Poole in which she told her point blank, women are too emotional to be good journalists. Their feelings get in the way. Poole told the Daily Beast it was absurd to think he'd made this comment. Somewhat repeatedly 2 years ago, Poole announced that he wanted a wife who would stay at home and raise her children. but that wasn't socially acceptable. When Poole was given an early version of Google Glass, he strolled around the office broadcasting his co-workers' activities live. It was viewed by some at Vice as a transparent attempt to bolster the image he'd been cultivating, a reporter who availed himself of the latest bleeding-edge tech to expand the boundaries of reporting. Vice also provided reporters working in conflict zones with protective gear. Poole would wear a flak jacket in the office, per multiple Vice sources. Fuck. Wow. It made him look like a poser, but others found his behavior downright offensive. One former longtime Vice editor staffer said since Vice reporting had been detained by hostile foreign governments, in their eyes, Poole treated the gear like a cosplay outfit, touting his own bravery, accomplishments, Vice paycheck, and often on the famous people he didn't go over well with either. At one point, he brought hacker-turned-Nazi troll Andrew Weave Ochtenheimer to the Vice newsroom and paraded him around. The former longtime editorial staffer felt Poole was showing off, as if to say, check it out, I'm hanging out with Weave. I'm also so plugged into internet culture. Look at me, with a hacker. Here's my hacker, man. This is so funny. All right, I got 3 minutes until I got to bring on the author of this article, who's going to tell us inside stories. Fuck, even the stuff at Vice is so damning. It's all like, he was an absolute clown. He's gotten all his political predictions wrong. Scroll through Poole's current output, and it's hard to find a video he's produced with which does not contain some combination of rank distortions, conspiracy theories treated as if they were credible ideas, or basic misunderstanding of the subject at hand. Recent study named Poole as a super spreader in falsehoods and voter fraud that ran up to the 2020 election. Take Poole's response to a handful of stories that came out after an adverse response to the vaccine. That way they could deny that Trump was rightly deserved credit for it. Then there's Poole's record for political predictions. In 2020, he routinely forecast a Trump win, possibly by 49 to 50 state landslide. When Biden won, Poole tried to retcon the history, claiming when he said landslide, it was tied to hypothetical contingencies like Trump appointing Tulsi Gabbard or legalizing marijuana. False. I turn on camera and I rant. There's no script. There's no plan. Yeah, no, that one checks out. Yeah. Tim Poole boasts what a rational skeptic he is and then proceeds to plug Seth Rich conspiracy and praise InfoWars in the very same stream. Oh, he's a Seth Richer, just like Jimmy Dore. Amazing.
So here's the thing. I don't care if you're Fox News, the New York Times, or Wilford Brimley. If you tell me something, you've got to back it up. I have a pretty high degree I have a decent burden of proof. If you're going to convince me, you got to. If I don't see it, I don't believe it, right? Pixar didn't happen. So I'm personally inclined to believe that there is at least a greater than probability chance, again, my opinion, that Seth Rich was in fact the leaker. Now with Kim.com statement, I'm sitting around a 57 to 65% chance that that Seth Rich was the leaker. InfoWars has done a good job over the past several years of moving more into the mainstream, the more acceptable, and they've gotten away from a lot of the crazier conspiracy stuff. But so yeah, a lot of the stuff they put out now isn't.
His source was Kim.com. Oh my god. Of course it was. Tim Poole comes out in opposition to the French Revolution. Yeah, we've seen that one before. Oh, here's the collection of all his predictions that were totally wrong.
I think Kamala and Biden might be throwaway candidates. They know they're going to get steamrolled in the election. I really don't see the Democrats winning this. I think it's fair to say Trump's going to win re-election. I think Trump might have a massive, massive victory, which shocks the left. I think we're looking at a Trump victory, man. Trump 2020 landslide, even with everything going on with COVID. I think that's what we can expect. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Trump had a 49-state landslide. I think we could see a 49-state landslide. We may be looking at a Mondale-Reagan type scenario where Trump
49 states. Historic.
Landslides 49 states. And
69 states. Nice. Inventing new states just to get the number.
we may see a 49-state landslide. Maybe a 50-state landslide. That'd be amazing. I think we might be seeing a 49-state landslide. I just really think it's more likely that Trump wins 500.
Wait, his source for using Kim.com was Kim.com quoting himself? He used himself as the source? That is so Tim Poole. That has got to be the most Tim Poole thing I've ever heard.
20 electoral votes. No amount of mail-in ballots will matter.
Oh yeah, you should check out Hayes Vadim's video. I'll play it in the background, Hayes Vadim. I'm going to bring on the author right now.
If Trump gets 537 or 36 or even 538 every single electoral vote. We all know Joe Biden will lose. Like, let's be real, man. As I've stated 1,000,001 times, Donald Trump's going to win. The Republicans are going to sweep. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Biden has defeated Donald Trump. Everything I've told you will be wrong and completely meaningless. So keep that in mind.
Agreed. Do you want to give everyone a quick introduction to yourself and what you do?
Yeah. My name is Robert Silverman. I am a freelance reporter and a cooking enthusiast. That'll do it, I think. Yeah, we'll start there. Why not?
And what made you interested in Mr. Tim Pool? Because I think you've done the most thorough article slash takedown in the history of his career.
Thanks. I mean, that actually was part of it. I mean, it seemed to me that the first thing that was interesting to me about Tim is one, he had built up this really massive following, and yet it, as far as I can tell, it was largely siloed in YouTube itself. Um, if you asked most people, not even someone who's got brain worms and internet poisoning like you or I,
Yeah.
about far right creators and, leave alone far right YouTubers, far right pundits, I don't think many of them would have heard of Tim. He definitely wouldn't, he's not the first name you think of. And yet his reach exceeded all of the, initial candidates that a person who isn't steeped in this would provide. And I thought, my first thought was just, well, that's interesting. Why did that happen? How did he do this? And I kind of knew the basics of his backstory when I started, seeing clips of his work. And I think actually the first few times I saw it is because of the fine creator of the Tim Pool Clips Twitter account. I saw
Hmm.
posts of his and little excerpts of his work, and I thought, well, that's interesting. Why is this person? How has this person gotten to this place? And that was the first question for me. Is like, okay, well, he was able to build this very successful career. Whatever else you want to say about Tim, he has been a success in terms of building an audience
He's very,
and done
very
it.
good at the YouTube, and he's not only good at that, he's
Yeah,
good at like creating multiple channels, multiple networks, and also propagating them very successfully.
yes, and doing it without attracting much in the way of attention from, let alone, like people who cover the misinformation beat or the tech beat or any of the places that these people usually get, written out and reported on. And that to me was also part of it that was interesting. And so I just started watching his content. And I started reading as much as I could about the articles that existed. And I started, and once I'd done that, it was just a question of saying, like, hearing certain things and saying, okay, it's time to start talking to people who knew him, people who knew him when he was working in digital media, people who knew him when he was live streaming from Occupy Wall Street, people who've known him since he left, and since he struck out on his own in digital media. And that's how the reporting started, and that's what it was. And to me, I mean, the question of Tim is like, aside from whatever piqued my initial interest, to me, there are a couple things about this story that I think make it very much worthwhile. One is that clearly his politics have evolved over the last decade. That's, to me, is fairly self-evident. Um, Perhaps not as much as someone might think at face value, but they have changed. And to me, it's something that Becca Lewis, who is an extremism researcher at Stanford University, that she said in the speech, is that we spend a lot of time, reporters do, pundits do, analysts do, looking at what the impact is of YouTube on its audience, how it drives them further and further towards more and more radical content, usually radical right-wing content. But far less time is spent actually what that impact is on the people who are making the content themselves.
Mhm.
And as Lewis said, that's actually a much greater indicator of the radicalization impact than it might be necessarily on the people who are consuming this product. So that to me is the important question here, is like, what does being creating as much content as Tim does, and that's, again, whatever else one wants to say about Tim, he does put out a great deal. He maintains a very rigorous content production schedule. But
Well, a
what
lot of
does
that
that
comes from the
impact
fact
have?
that he
Yeah.
doesn't have to do a lot of research for his segments, right? Like he said himself,
Right. Well,
he
yeah.
he queues up like as Tim Pool Clips is revealed through their reporting, he queues up typically 4 sources. It's typically going to be the Daily Mail, or most
Yep.
of the times it was Andy No before they had a huge falling out.
Yeah.
But Andy No was his 4th most frequently cited source as an
I know,
actual
it's
like
just
source for his
Andy knows
reporting.
tweets.
Yes,
This Andy knows tweets were his, I think, second. They finished
that
second
that's
in that
wild.
month in mid 2020. It was the Daily Mail and then Andy knows tweets, because this was like, summer 2020, when Andy was covering a great deal of the protests that were going across America. and in all over the world. So Andy Ngo was generating also a lot of content. So it's not, and Tim has a very clear interest in these protests, and I would argue a clear point of view. But that to me is not entirely surprising either. Yeah, I mean, he's got what he developed is a scalable formula, which is that he basically serves as a conduit in the far right misinformation human centipede, if you want to be really critical about it, or the far right information food chain, if you want to put it a little nicer. But he is a way that things that pop up on Reddit, things that you see in the far right press, things that you see even on Twitter, will get chewed up, digested, sort of, and regurgitated, and then sent out
as
into
truth.
the world. And you can see this, yeah, as truths. And you can see this, like, there was a chunk of time where Tim was, where I think I was watching, and I didn't get into this in the article, where you would see subjects that Tim would get interested in, and he would sort of be an early adopter, because like later that evening or within a day or two, it would show up as a Tucker Carlson segment. And granted, they're all feeding from the same trough, so that's not exactly surprising. But you could watch it move up the food chain, and Tim is a step in that. But I think more than that, I mean, that formula that he has is very replicable. But I think the ways in which Tim really does, aside from whatever his own personal beliefs are, it's that he gives platforms to people for whom going on Tucker Carlson might not exactly be kosher.
Yeah.
Like, he has had, I can't say for sure whether Jack Posobiec has been on Tucker Carlson, but he's not a frequent guest. I don't think Tucker Carlson is going to bring Steve Bannon back on air right now. And Steve was back on Tim's live show a month ago. He will have hosts from the Epoch Times. He will have Hotep Jesus, who has made many, many, many openly anti-Semitic comments. He will have Darren Beatty on, who was even too much of an extremist for the Trump organization, because he was going to these, openly white nationalist, these conferences featuring other, not that Darren is, but just conferences where white nationalists are showing up. Like, Tim is a place where those people can go on his show and again be put before a huge audience. There will be invariably, something like 30 to 50,000 people watching live on any episode, and that's not even counting how many people watch it later the next day when he throws it up, when he puts it up on this channel, or when he chops an IRL episode up into 4 to 5 different segments and shares those. But that, in terms of how Tim fits into that particular world, that to me is the most. If you want to say what are Tim's politics, that to me is the place where those far right ideas get spread the most, because Tim does not press the people he's interviewing. He pressed Vosh a little bit. He pressed Destiny a little bit. But in terms of actually interrogating the beliefs of the people he's sitting across from that nice table in his compound with, he really does let them rip. And he said this 4 years ago when he spoke to the New Yorker, that like he doesn't feel that it's sort of the Larry King motif, if you will, that he doesn't feel it's his job to make a value judgment, I guess, in terms of what people are saying is I mean, at worst, or he doesn't feel like that's his job to say, like, wait a second, when someone says something, how credible is it? What are they actually saying? And should I put this out to my massive audience? There was actually a moment, and I didn't have a chance to include this in the story, and it's something that Tim Pool Clips, shouts to Tim Pool Clips, tweeted out. It's that his co-host Ian Crossland, who you dubbed, I believe, Weed Lord, aptly so.
I believe Thought Slime called him Weed Lord, but I coined Moon Lord. I want Moon Lord to go down in the annals. So Adam Kreigler is Weed Lord. So I'm the one who's
Adam Kreigler is Weed Lord.
Yes,
so Ian is Moon Lord. I messed it up.
Yeah. So Ian is Moon Lord, and yes, that was me. I will definitely take credit for that. That is one of my better moments, and I'm proud of that.
So Crossland is there, and this is during the summer of 2020 or early fall, I believe, and they're talking about how Tim had spent many months at that point railing about the ongoing protests. And it was at that time that he gave this very impassioned speech about how the far left, nebulous, all-consuming, creature that he talks about on the left, is going to come to your door, and they are going to like functioning like an actual morality police. And they're, and they're going to come, and they're going to, and if you don't bend the knee to them, they're going to take away your job, and they're going to have your mom fired. And so just Americans are just going to be cowering in the corner, clutching to their guns and begging to be left alone, like Winston Smiths, hoping that someone will do it out like to an imaginary Julia somewhere else. So he's giving a version of that rant again and again all summer. And at some point, Crossland says to him, he says, well, what if someone who's listening takes this literally? And he goes, well, what do you mean? Like, Antifa's not going to listen to me. And Crossland sort of, turns it back on him. He says, no. Well, what if someone who is listening to you, and I'm paraphrasing, so Mr. Crossland, if you care to correct me, you know how to get in touch. But what if someone who's listening thinks that Antifa really is going to like knock on their door and harm them, and buys a gun or goes out and attacks Antifa before it can be harmed, like harm can be visited on them? And what Tim says is I think wonderfully indicative of where he's at, which is, he said, that's just normal conversation. That's just people talking to each other. People do that all the time. And it's as if he didn't realize. It's like, yeah, people talk. Most people don't talk to 100 million people a month.
Yeah.
And that when you talk to 100 million people a month in his peak months, I think he's down to about 45 million now. But still, it's over 1 million people a day. That there's a greater level of responsibility for what you say, not just what comes out of your own mouth, but what comes out of the mouths of the people who you decide to platform. And it's that act of platforming, which again goes back to his entire history. That when he left Vice and Fusion, the first thing he did, or one of the first, was go to Sweden and begin platforming all kinds of far right people. And when they were asking him, like, when BuzzFeed asked him, like, did you know that this guy Chang Frick was actually a member of the Sweden Democrats, that he held local office for the Sweden Democrat Party, which is a far-right anti-immigrant party. And Tim said, and they didn't quote him directly, I believe, they said that Tim said he wasn't aware of those facts. And like, that's your job, man.
Yeah.
If you're going to call yourself a journalist or even a commentator, whatever, even if you want to say, well, I don't do journalism anymore, I do commenting now. It's like, regardless of the title, your job is to know as much about these people who you're platforming, because if not, you bear responsibility to a certain degree for what they put out. And,
absolutely. And it's not just him going over there and then being like, well, I'm just going to have a conversation with these far right fascists, and then I want to like see what they think. Or it's I'm just going to do a regular segment, and they're going to be my people and helping me out, field reporters on the ground, showing me around town and teaching me about this immigrant crisis that's taking place. That is so different. Those are two completely different scenarios.
Right. Yeah. And partly, and I think this is again something that Becca Lewis said, is that the context collapse and the flattening effect that YouTube has by definition as a medium means that the way that people take it in is that everything becomes your buddy hanging out online. Everything, like, and to be fair, you are the online buddy for a lot of people too.
And absolutely. So, and I should be held accountable to the same standard. I will say openly, I'll be the first to say openly, I'm like, this is an opinion piece. You're watching a dumpster fire wannabe comedian just giving you the news, but I still think you have to be held to the same standard as everyone else. Like if I have someone on this show, I should know who they are and at least understand what I'm getting into beforehand. And if I did a segment, if I did a segment with someone who turned out to be Lauren Southern, and I was just like, well, she was just talking to me about how there's this crisis in South Africa and how farmers seem to disappear and they're all white or something. I don't know. I'm just asking questions. Then yes, you have some responsibility, right? And I
right. Well, look, I feel like me submitting a blood sample and my social security number to you before coming on air was a little much. But I wanted to make sure that you could trust that I said what I meant. But
it's a rigorous process. I told you.
It is. It's a very rigorous process. But I mean, that's sort of the point is like every time when you consume news or information on YouTube, all of it feels like you're hanging out with your friend. And that's what successful YouTubers do. They create a personal bond that they feel like, look, whatever degree of intellectual rigor and whatever degree of careful research and thoughtful work that a person does, to a certain degree, the form makes that a little bit secondary. It's still going to be like hanging out with your bud. Like if you like watching, I don't know, Vadim's videos, or if you like watching Vaush's videos, or if you like, you know, any bread tuber who you like, there is that exact same personal bond. It's not necessarily a bad thing that happens,
Mm-hmm.
but unfortunately, people take when they see a person on YouTube who they consider to be, to a certain degree, their friend and someone they know personally, it has a great deal more impact than when you're reading an article online, or
Oh, of
God
course, of
forbid,
course.
in
Yeah,
a
yeah.
magazine,
It's the
or
influencer, basically
or even on
parasocial
TV, or even on
phenomenon.
TV
Yeah,
news. It's
yeah.
far more power. Like it is. I actually, although I do think to a certain degree, Tucker Carlson does ape some of these techniques, but it is, I think, a far more direct and emotionally impacting bond than even someone like Tucker with the largest platform in cable.
Mhm.
And I think Tim, again, I will credit him. He does a very good job of creating that bond. Now, for me, I find it a little hard to understand, um, because I'm not his target audience for one,
Yeah, of
but
course.
yeah, it's that the other thing, and the thing that I really couldn't figure out in this story, and I wanted to, but I didn't have room because it's a little long. But I didn't have room to get into this, and I couldn't even really answer it. Is like I feel like objectively I can say why people tune in to watch Alex Jones, or
Oh,
why
of
they
course.
tune in to watch the dearly departed Mila Yiannopoulos, R.I.P.
Mhm.
though. And like I understand, or even Steven Crowder, like there is a performative theatrical aspect to what they do. That doesn't mean that what they're saying is any less bad.
Mhm.
It's not a value judgment. It's just that you can recognize the ample theatricality of it, and in what ways that performance might appeal to an audience. With Tim, I'm not sure what it is, and honest, if you got answers, I'm all ears, because you've certainly consumed a
Well,
lot of
okay.
Tim's
I
his
guess,
tint as well.
but before I get put on trial and answer questions, I did want
Hello.
to. I did. I mean, you are a reporter at the end of the day. I'm just an opinion piece.
Okay.
I do want to ask, what is the most shocking of all the revelations? Because you've spoken now to 30 of his ex-employees. What did you learn?
Yes.
What are the bombshells to
All
come
right.
from all this?
There are the couple of bombshells. I mean, the first one is the one that leads the piece, which is that as of September, Tim was saying in private that that people were telling him, or he was receiving, his exact phrase was, "Dude, I've been getting messages from people saying that as soon as November 3rd, meaning the election, goes chaotic, that militias, far right people, Proud Boys, they're going to storm the Capitol and take the White House and go paramilitary." Is his phrase. I'm paraphrasing a little. You can read it in the story.
Mhm.
And that's for an independent journalist like Tim Pool. You would think that would be the kind of thing that might make it onto a show. That might be a hot, good scoop. That if as far back as early September, he knew that was gonna. He had been getting word about that sort of thing. But like 2 days before, Tim was, let's just say on January 2nd, like when on other sites were saying, like, actually these people are very publicly and in all kinds of online forums and platforms talking about gearing up for violence, he called that an example of the media's depravity. And he said, "What do you think they're going to do?" Meaning these Trump supporters. It's so stupid. So, even whatever his opinions are, there are things that he seemingly chooses not to share with his same far right audience, which to me suggests that he knows what his audience does and does not want to hear, and he feeds them information that he thinks will get more engagement. So to me, that's a big question of like, well, is he just a guy who has these far right thoughts and he's sharing them, or is he manipulating his audience? To me, it would seem to indicate that it's more towards the left. The
And
other thing,
well,
yeah.
sorry, I just wanted to quickly ask. This is also a person who has been stating emphatically on his show that we are on the verge of an upcoming war, right? There's
Yes.
going to be a civil war. He talks about it as if it's a fucking Marvel movie on a regular basis, and also advocates sometimes that it may be a race war, right? He's even said that out loud.
That's
Well,
something
at the same
that's
time,
the other thing that I was going to say.
oh,
Yeah.
okay,
He
okay,
doesn't-
sorry.
he-
Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no. And I'm more than one, like, I mean, it's sort of a meme at this point that Tim is talking, that no matter what the subject matter is, Tim turns it into a question of like, well, it looks like civil war is coming, or peaceful
Yeah.
separation, or some kind of balkanization. Like there was an episode where he started talking, this was a couple of weeks ago, about a George Floyd mural that got hit by lightning. Okay, that's not the most exciting subject for a video, but it was a slow news day, so he went at it. By the end of that video, he is asking himself, is the left going against the natural order of God? I swear. That episode is queued up and linked in the article. If you want to watch it, you don't have to watch the whole video. You can go straight to the point at the end where he's talking about the natural order of things.
Of course.
Right. I mean, it's sort of it's sort of a well-known fact that that whatever is talking about Tim fearmongers, that this is okay. It's another grain of sand, you see, pointing towards this complete and total societal collapse. And the thing that Tim does that I think is effective here is that he is not 100% wrong. There are serious divisions in the United States, and there are serious political animosity and genuine anger.
Oh, and
But
racial tensions that have been exacerbated by these systems we have in place. Yes.
Right. By the systems and by, look, if you want to say both the Democrats and the Republicans, I would have no problem
Absolutely.
with that either.
Yep.
Right. So when he says that, he's not wrong. I mean, that's another smart thing that he does is that, when Tim says the mainstream media is always lying to you, they're always lying. They're evil and they lie to you and they hate you, is what he says.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they lie to you all the time, because they want to hurt you. They want to destroy you. They want you, meaning his largely male 18 to 35-year-old right-of-center audience. They want you to suffer. When he says that, which can sound that pings a whole bunch of emotional cherries. But the thing that he's not wrong about is, yes, it is a good idea to interrogate mainstream sources, which have all kinds of biases, and that you should not take what any reporter, myself included, says at face value. And yes, for years, what the majority of the press has done is to parrot the conventional viewpoint, and that should be interrogated. Again, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, man, you're not wrong. But where the place that you're going to, that these reporters are out to harm you, that's where it goes into this kind of manipulation of his audience, I think, where it feels like he's manipulating his audience, that I think is really kind of scary. So Tim talks a lot about race war, but or civil war, but in private on 3 occasions that I was fine, and that I was able, Freudian slip, in private on 3 occasions, people said to me that Tim actually just sort of said, no, he upped it up from civil war to race war. The first time is he told a black employee of his media company, which was then called Subverse and became Scanner, and fell apart and led to some pet hostage situation. But he told him, and this was the only black guy in the room, and what he said to him was, yes, the race war is coming, and I don't know which side you're going to be on, so you need to pick a side. And I had the other two other people who were in the room when this conversation took place verified that that's what Tim said. Tim has denied this.
So he went full Charles Manson with it, full 100% Charles Manson. Helter Skelter. There's an upcoming race war. You need to pick a side. What side are you on?
Right. And we're all gonna look. Sharon Tate had it coming, man. That's all I gotta say. So.
Is that a Tim Pool quote?
Yeah, no, it might be Quentin Tarantino, but and the other occasion is back at 27 during Free Speech Week, again, a Milo event that kind of collapsed under its own weight. That he was hanging out with people like Carl Sargon of Akkad Benjamin. Mm-hmm. So the house was, Mike Cernovich was dropping by from time to time, and a bunch of your far right babes were all there renting an Airbnb in Oakland. So Daniel Ambroso, who directed the documentary White Noise, was there, and he's doing, he's working these guys because he's getting ready to make this movie. So he's just sort of, making conversation to develop sources and see what might happen. So what happens is like Carl gets Sargon gets very mad, gets mad about this, and so does Tim. Tim initially gets mad because he evidently didn't understand about the whole signing a release form thing, and he thought that this was somehow an attempt to trick them. Like he was screaming at them, like, "You shouldn't sign this. Don't sign this. I know. I worked at media companies. You shouldn't sign this." So that sort of bothered him. And as the night went on, it was a long day in this house. And eventually, by the end of the night, Benjamin was getting, according to Lombroso, very, very upset. And he kept saying that the media is intentionally is pushing questions of race in America and reporting on race in America in order to purposely push people into a race war. And Tim, while he was certainly not as loud about it or as vehement or as frequent in saying this as Sargon, was agreeing with him, is how Lombroso described it.
Wow.
That was the truth. And then the third instance is with a colleague of his and someone who worked with Tim at Fusion. And they said that Tim would say this as well. This was sort of while they were covering it at Fusion, while Tim was covering, some early Trump rallies in which there was a lot of violence, and which, when pro and anti-Trump groups are fighting, surprise or surprise, there is going to be probably a pretty clear racial imbalance between the two groups. But that was the context in which it was said the third time is that Tim was going to these events and seeing this kind of, this sectarian violence breakout, and that he said this person, the race war is coming.
What do you think his end game is on all this? Like, what exactly is his purpose? Because, like, at the end of the day, if someone was to tell me Tim Pool is a grifter, for example, I've heard people on some side of the aisle say, well, he deeply believes in the kind of stuff he talks about. And then that becomes a little conflicting when I see these reports, especially the ones that you just, like, basically broke, where multiple people were like, he doesn't really even give a fuck about the reporting he's a part of. He just sits there on his phone all day, LARPing around, wearing Kevlar, Well, that was funny too to find out. I was like, "What the fuck?" He was in Vice offices wearing Kevlar. Like that's Steven Crowder level of like I wear holsters, so I'm a big man kind of shit.
Another thing that multiple sources said, and this is not something that I included in the reporting, but it was something that multiple sources said to me, is that that it was sort of when Tim would be sent on these reporting trips. This is at both Vice and Fusion, I believe. That he would really gear up for these things. And okay, I mean, you can see this in photos of Tim from the time that he's wearing, some protective, like this flak jacket, and he's wearing a helmet, and he's wearing all this stuff. And okay, look, again, I have never reported from any kind of protest, even, let alone a protest that turned violent, let alone going to a foreign country to cover civil unrest, or anything like that. If you asked me to do that, I would be soiling my pants so gosh darn quickly, you would not believe it. It would terrify me. Yeah. I would say, you know what? No, I don't want to do this. I don't. I can't do this job. I do not. I would absolutely be scared. Like there's that, and I think that is a perfectly normal response. But Tim would wear a lot of protective gear into these things when he's going to Ferguson, for example. And what they said is that, when reporters go to these places and they already look like they're prepped for war, that people don't want to talk to that person.
Makes sense.
Because it stands across as like, wait, you're going to come into my home, you're going to come to my community, and you're going to treat it like it's a battle zone.
Yeah.
You're not someone who wants to hear what I have to say. You already think you're already scared of me, is the impression that it gives off. It's like you're already worried that, I mean, granted, I don't think walking up to someone like with a microphone or a camera and saying like, listen, I want to talk with you is necessarily going to be an implication to that person you're talking to, like that you don't. It's that you're accusing them of being possibly violent, but it has a distancing effect. What it does, it immediately makes it seem like you're not on their side, but that you're coming into this in a way with a set of judgments and values about this community that you are, as a reporter, parachuting into, and that you don't live here. So that was a very thing that that was the thing that inevitably made it hard for him or harder for him to connect with people he was interviewing and talking. Let
But again,
alone the fact
what
that he
do you
was
think
very concerned with like how his like when he's live streaming, is he getting a lot of replies on Twitter about?
Yeah, but to
Yeah.
me again, I want to ask the question: what do you think is his end game? If he's
Oh, you're right. I didn't answer the question.
Yeah, no worries. I know, dodging the questions. I see.
Yeah, I know.
No, but for someone who again talks about the civil war, this race war, and at the same time is making phone calls, secret recordings, and now they've been exposed, in which he's saying people are going to go down to DC. They're gonna they might turn violent.
They're just to clarify. Well, it wasn't a phone call. Just to clarify,
Okay.
these people
Yeah,
were all in the
for
same
sure.
room at the time. Yeah. But whatever. What is his end game? I really I don't know. Uh, I would be surprised, and this is entirely my opinion. I don't know if Tim knows. I really do think. Look, I think when he talks about, let me just put it this way: on many occasions, Tim's dissatisfaction with the digital media companies that he worked with, and again, I am not defending digital media companies as being a person who has been on staff at one. Like, there are a lot of problems. There are things that are going to make you mad. There are ways that digital media screws things up in ways that drive me up a tree. There is, again, a very deep kernel of truth when Tim gets mad at digital media.
Mhm.
But I do think Tim is sincere when he says, like, he wants to do real, when he says that he wants to find like unbiased and fact-based news. Again, I don't know whether he wants to or not. The proof is that he keeps trying to set up these companies.
Yeah.
Um,
But couldn't you just make the argument that he's just really good at making profitable media companies? Like he's said
I don't know if
openly
they're-
in the last couple months that he wants to start non-political channels, and he has. He's got kind of an IRL living on the compound channel. They're going to get into like other forms of media. They're going to be same thing with like Ben Shapiro is doing a big push for this as well.
Yeah,
to make,
yeah,
like conservative,
I-
ultra conservative movies and other kinds of media consumption.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, if the if like fracking moguls weren't backing Ben Shapiro for all those years, I don't know how successful his media venture, like with like
Yeah.
what's her name from the Baby Yoda show would go with Toronto.
Yeah,
would go.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the name for it, right? The Baby Yoda show. I know because I actually watched the whole thing.
It was
very
good
up.
actually. It was
good.
like
I enjoyed it.
It was like a video game cutscene. It was like a very good video game cutscene. That's
It's
what
like
it felt
they
like.
kept having him go on side missions.
That's
and then
it.
you
It was
had to
side
do
quests,
other
fetch
side
quests.
missions.
Yeah, it was a bunch of fetch quests. It was fun.
Listen, I got to return this baby to the Jedi, but oh no, another obstacle. And look, here's Timothy Oliphant. All right, I guess I'll spend time with him. So if I had to guess, I have no idea, but I think he does want to do that. I mean, look, his venture right now, the venture that he is doing right now, as I reported, is very profitable. I don't know. The media companies are very hard to turn a profit on.
Oh, absolutely. But what about all these credible ties to the right and far right? That's where it becomes kind of frightening to me. Like I could make the argument that he is not self-aware enough to realize the pipeline. Like you were talking about Rebecca's incredible academic paper, and I've had her on to talk about it before. The Alternative News Network, right? Showing how
the
these cross collaborations,
the alternative
influence.
Network.
The alternative media influence.
Get it right, fancy boy.
But like maybe he's not self-aware that he's a part of this, even though he platforms the worst actors and platforms the worst conspiracy theorists and gives them a very large voice to talk about this kind of shit. There has to be something to be said about the fact that he is also palling around. He's like the newest editor he just hired is an actual like white nationalist. She's not even subtle about it.
I don't know if I would call Cassandra an actual white nationalist. I would say she spends. I think you can accurately say she spends a great deal of time promoting people like Nick Fuentes, and she hangs around with Peter Brimelow, and she goes on VDare podcasts and things like that. I would say she frequently promotes and associates people who you can absolutely call white nationalists. I think so.
She's entirely an orbiter. She's a white nationalist orbiter. Okay.
I mean, again, it's I think with people like that, it's best to say like, well, here's what they do. whatever label you want to say. If you wanted to say like, well, she's a neo-fascist or she's an extremist, or it's these terms can get a little mushy.
How about alt-light? We'll just say alt-light then.
No, that was just a 2017 thing, man. Come on, get it today. But so he hired Cassandra Fairbanks to be his editor-in-chief. And she writes for a website, Cassandra's also still blogging. Like, God love her. That's a lot of blogging that she's doing. She's still blogging for the Gateway Pundit also, while blogging for Tim and running his site. But the thing is, like, this was something that I noticed 2 weeks ago. Is suddenly I started seeing posts on Tim's website, but by a woman with the last name Brimelow. And I was like, the first thing that made me think of is Peter Brimelow, who Peter Brimelow is a white nationalist. And I was like, wait a second, is that Peter Brimelow's daughter? And so I checked, and yeah, that's his daughter. And she doesn't seem to have much in the way of writing credits. She's got one, maybe she has others that were written under a assumed name, but if so, I can't find them. She had one college writing credit. So I asked Tim, like, what were I said, like, my questions, and you can read that, which are linked out in the story. You can read every question I sent to Tim, which is, why did you hire this person who is like the daughter of Peter Brimelow? I cannot find any previous bylines for her. Was she writing under an assumed name? And he said that, she sent in a quality application, and Cassandra Fairbanks made recommendations. And he didn't know who her dad was. Not his job.
Not his job.
Not his job. Not his job to know.
Of course.
Well, you might think, and I don't want to judge, but you might think that someone who has been covering the far right for a long time and has been, covering the far left for a long time would have heard of the name Peter Brimelow before. And that if someone handed an application with the last name Brimelow, it might have, caused you to ask that question. Now, granted, that's not, look, she is not responsible for the sins of her father. It is not her job. No, she could very well disagree with everything her father has ever said. There are plenty of pictures on the internet of them going out to dinner and stuff very recently. But again, you can go out to dinner with people you don't like. I certainly have gone to dinners with members of my family who I don't care for. So again, you can do that. But that to me was a very telling question about Tim. That his answer was, I didn't know. I don't know who her father is. It's this other person's fault. Which is exactly what everyone at Vice Infusion said who worked with him. That when things would go wrong, it was other people's fault. It was other people, it was other producers who didn't understand how dangerous the situation was. So this is why, it's other people who, it's everyone else who doesn't know what they're doing. Not me, Tim Pool. Like, that was a thing that was said over and over and over again. You can see this, it happened in Sweden. Hey, here's Chang Frick who you're hanging around with. I didn't know that about him. Mm-hmm. Well, that's like, again, man, I really think that's your job. That's sort of the point. I mean, whether he knows. So again, to this question, which I still haven't answered, whether he knows what, like, Jack Posovic's long history of associations and alliances and, with actual neo-Nazis abroad and members of the far right and his promotion of Pizzagate or any of Jack Posovic's history, or he is choosing not to say it because he thinks his audience wants to see him chat with Jack Posobiec. And I think he's had Posobiec on at least 3 times. In the end, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. It really, really doesn't matter what his motivations are, why he's doing it. I think the long-term question of whether he actually knows this and is just sort of kitty-cornering it, or he's just doesn't want to know, so he's not going to do the work, the end result is still the same. And that, to me, is the most important thing. The end result is that far more people get to hear Jack Posobiec, and they are the kind of people who, Tim's audience is not necessarily, like, it is a right-wing audience, but it is the sort of the kind of right-wing audience. I think the appeal, again, is that they sort of, like, consider themselves, like, willing to hear both sides. And so they feel like they're getting the left version from Tim.
Yeah,
that's how they feel like the scales are being balanced. But instead, those people get to hear what Hotep Jesus has to say.
Yeah.
So again, I don't think in my reporting I was able to answer that question. And again, I think it's almost it doesn't really, what his end game is does not matter. What needs to be looked at, and what this article tried to do, is to look at what he has done
and what he's been enabled to do through these giant
Yeah.
tech companies, the ones that he
And he's
always
doing
talks
right,
shit
yeah.
about, right? But he's being
Oh, yeah.
promoted, being promoted heavily by YouTube's algorithms. So part of the reasons he's been able to grow as large as he has, does YouTube not have a responsibility to address this as well? Because they've been frequently asked about people like Steven Crowder, for example, who promotes the worst brand of transphobia, and then Tim Pool, who promotes a very dangerous mix of conspiracy theories, whether that's about how Trump's election was stolen, but he always toes the line. He knows exactly how to be careful, or this new wave of anti-vax nonsense, right?
I have a lot of favorite Tim conspiracy theories, but Tim would deny fervently that he's a conspiracy theorist at all.
Of course.
But I have some favorites of mine of his. One is like at the beginning in December when the COVID vaccine first started getting rolled out. And there was, a couple of stories. There was one story from some local news station in Texas about how they were demonstrating doctors getting the first COVID vaccine jabs. And, someone they were probably doing this photo, it was a it was for local TV news. So, they were probably, they may have botched a shot and they didn't get it when they gave someone an injection. And so they sort of tried to get around it by, fake injecting someone with a vaccine that had already been depressed. But the story really made the rounds because suddenly all the conspiracy theorists and the anti-vax types are like, aha, see, the doctors aren't trying to get the vaccine. They're trying to trick us into doing it. See, it's all a plot. Moloch is behind it, and maybe the Jews, but definitely Moloch is behind this evil plot, right? So people freaked out about this stuff. So Tim covered it. And Tim was like, he was sort of doing his thing where he says what these conspiracies are and doesn't say that he personally believes any of them. It's just, he's just doing his thing of commenting on the news. That's a thing in the news. So he's going to comment on it. But by the end, he gets to this place, because like when you have to talk for 20 minutes, as I think I've proven right now, sometimes you can talk yourself into circles. So what he says by the end is like, I'm not sure and I can't say if I know, but, it just seems awfully convenient to me that the media is putting out all these stories about the vaccine not working at a time when Trump is fighting for the presidency. And, they're trying to make him, or maybe they're trying to make him look bad and diminish his popularity. Because, wouldn't everyone want to keep him president if he was the one who gave us this miraculous vaccine? It seems awfully convenient to me. And, it's like, okay, that's, that's a conspiracy. And you said that. Fine. But, now 6 months later, he's getting very heated on Twitter about Biden's door-to-door attempts to vaccinate people. And it's like, well, wait a second, Tim, you just said 6 months ago that the media was trying to say the vaccine is bad. And now you're saying, and it's the exact opposite. And I don't know if he even remembers having said that. Look,
no,
again,
he does. I think it's a lot simpler than we're making it out to be. I think he just follows whatever the narrative is, whatever the right wing talking points are. You'll see him start to do it from what he positions himself as a center left voice on
the
this.
rational centrist.
Yes, I supported Bernie Sanders. I'm clearly a leftist. You know what I'm talking about. I'm just disgusted by the Democrats, and so this is why I'm.
Well, I didn't leave the left.
Republicans.
The left left me. Yeah, it's the Dave Rubin started.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you're right. Look, but the point I wanted to make, and I'll just make this very quickly, is that, look, again, to be fair to Tim, if you asked me to talk for 4 hours a day, every single day, one, I would not be able to remember everything I said. Or two, and two,
as someone who does that, I can tell you I don't.
Yeah, and while I'd like to think that I would maintain a certain ideological consistency in it, that I radically ping from one pole to another. Yeah, I'm sure you could find places where I said the exact opposite of something I said 6 months or a year ago or something like that. He talks so the sheer that would again, but the point I want to make is the sheer volume of content that he creates, which is how he makes a profit from YouTube, necessarily means that he is going to have to just reach for the first thing that he can find in the Daily Mail or from Andy No's tweets or from whatever is burbling around the online right and spit it out. The production schedule necessarily leads him to places where he is giving out information that is, either wrong or contradictory or bad, or delves into conspiracy theory, or just returns to his three-pen anecdotes. Like, to a certain point, Tim has a bit of a logistics problem, and to me, that's partially YouTube's to blame as well, because YouTube says, here's how you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and and Tim is just doing that. He's following the game plan that YouTube has laid out.
Wow. One of the last things I want to ask you about,
Sure.
the story that I thought would have destroyed Tim Pool, because it's the internet adage, don't fuck with cats, was of course him holding a cat hostage for negotiation purposes. Did you find out anything extra about that? Did you have an opportunity to speak to any of his employees? How did that story take him down, etc.?
Yeah, the cat, that's a Wilson. Alas, I have no new cat information.
Okay.
I have
All
no,
right.
except I know as much
You're
as
not
you
going to
do,
break
man.
Catgate for me then, eh? There's only so many stories you can break. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Look, I just Tim. Tim. That's. I just know what everyone else says, that the cat appears to be safe now, according to that video with the cat looking safe. So yeah, sorry. I'm not on the cat feed.
Maybe instead of that, then I would ask, what's like the final takeaway from all this and the future of the Beanieverse?
Again, it's the thing that, like, the thing that really, like, it isn't even a question of, like, what if Tim didn't figure out this model, somebody else would.
Yeah.
That's to me the thing that's just really sort of like, well, YouTube is not like most social platforms. YouTube exists to make you feel mad or scared or both. Like, that's what they all run on. Twitter does that as well. I log onto Twitter all day long. I'm there all the goddamn time. And it makes me mad a lot. But that's what those platforms are designed to do. And until, look, before any of this, anyone figured out a way to monetize it, like, the internet had very weird, flat, like, again, context tripping. And this is the way that Charlie Warzel, if you don't subscribe to his newsletter, Galaxy Brain, I would highly recommend it. It's quite good. He's a former Times and BuzzFeed reporter, and he has a newsletter now. How novel, but it's quite good. That he talks about this is that one of the main impacts of the internet on how we relate to each other is the flattening and stripping of context, so that we don't actually, like, take the Simone Biles incident, which is something that Warsaw wrote about last week. Like, Simone Biles backed out of the Olympics for a number of reasons having to do with mental health. If you went to the internet to get that story, it's going to take you a lot of work to find out the news. And a complex story about an incredible athlete who has dealt with sexual trauma, like, is a survivor of sexual trauma. And there's an actual really interesting, fascinating news story to get to there. But most people who get that information from the internet, the first thing they're going to see about it is, like, that Matt Walsh's tweet from the Daily Wire, where he made a weird tweet about Michael Jordan, never quitting, which everyone dunked on, because Michael Jordan famously did quit after winning. And but Twitter's trending topic section had it as, like, people are responding to Matt Walsh's tweet. But even if you didn't go through that entryway, there are like 100 points of entryway where you go into the culture war outrage cycle about a thing, and in order to find out what happened to this person, it takes work on people's part. And to me, that is very bad and very, very, very scary. And I would say Tim Pool is a very big part of that apparatus, again, with his constant talk of civil war, who plays into that very deeply about making people, instead of more informed, he makes his audience more scared and more angry and less informed. And if it's not him, there are a lot of lesser lights who are just like him. And there will be more unless we can figure this out. And I wish I had if I could say, well, we should just, barge the lav now and we'll take care of this. I wish it was that simple, but it does make me very worried and scared, which, again, I spend a lot of time on the internet. So naturally that's my constant state of being.
Robert, it was an absolutely incredible article, really good reporting, great journalism, +1, achievement unlocked. Outside of that Daily Beast article, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at BOBSAIETTA. And if you DM me there, I will absolutely tell you the story of where the name Bob Sayeda comes from. It's a delightful tale. But you can always find me there on the bad website. I freelance for a lot of places. I'll have some more stories coming out in the Daily Beast within the next, I think, couple of weeks. I'm going to have a couple more things, which I'm not at liberty to discuss at the moment. But if you'd like to read this story, it's how coward and phony Tim Pool became one of the biggest political YouTubers on the planet. And you can, if you Google that, you'll find it. So I'd hope you give it a read, and if you want to ask me any questions about it but not yell at me, I am more than happy to have a conversation with anyone who's interested, really. Or if you disagree and you hate it, but if you ask nice, I promise I will talk to you.
Oh, that's more than I've ever heard any journalists say. Most of them are like, please stay away from me.
Look, as you know, sort of like I said, I think earlier, as a fairly washed middle-aged white guy, I'm going to avail myself of that privilege and say, yeah, I know there are trolls who are going to be mad at me, and that's okay. But I am making this offer. You want to really talk, and you'll be nice. I absolutely will talk to anyone who will be nice about it, even people who think I suck. But you just have to be nice. That's it. That's my only rule. Be nice.
Very fair. Thank you so much. That was it was awesome to finally speak to you, and I hope to do it again soon. Because
thank you. Like I said, I'm a first time, long time. I'm a big fan, man.
Oh,
I like the tent.
Well, it goes both ways now. That was an excellent article.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Cheers. Everybody, go check out Robert's stuff. Go read that article. It's very, very good. And also go check out Hey It's Vadim, the one who not only set that up, so you get a producer credit as per our agreement, but also go check out his channel. We were watching in the background that excellent video deep dive that Vadim did on Tim Pool. Very, very good stuff. YouTube.com/Hey It's Vadim. Thank you so much. Erwan, that was a ton of fun. Do you want movies and Serfs watching the movies? So then come over to the new channels. It's the Serfs cinema. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Can you do the thing, that thumbs up and comment and all those things that help us out in the algorithm that controls every aspect of our lives? Also, if you happen to have a Facebook account, can you delete it? Just delete it. You should probably delete your Facebook account because it's not a great company. But hey, if you can't do that for whatever reason, I understand. And could you also go to facebook.com/thesurftimes then and give us a little like and a follow. We're just trying to push back against the fact that people like Ben Shapiro happen to dominate the platform entirely. And when everyone asks, why do older generations believe the things they believe? One of the problems is the majority of them on social media use Facebook. So to counter that, we're just going to be on there too now. Also, if you happen to have a union or a worker co-op or even a leftist project, podcast, website, Zoom, MySpace, it doesn't matter. We will advertise it for free on this channel. All you got to do is go to weareserfs.com and use the forms that we got there, weareserfs.com. Thanks, everybody.
To our wonderful gods, Xander Corvus, VK Jehannam, T. Grow, and Peyton L. Just, may you smite all of our enemies. To our monarchs, Tom Spiker and the Tim Caucus, we are your humble servants, ready to do all your bidding. To our lords, Evan Nudie, Trevor R., Alexander Thaler, Ryan Lubin, and Jeff Lamb, we shall proudly carry your banner on the online battlefield. To our Knights of the Round Table, Val 9000, Jenna Tal, Dark Puppy, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Multimondi, Trevor Janis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojack, Saren 42, Chronic the Hemphog, Phone Jenny, Radical Maniac, Ramon Acosta, Jimmy Big Nuts, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Yopi, Josh Mickelson, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our glass and we raise our swords and we salute you.